it's heating, I'll move it back and put some more heat on the rest of the tubing and get the tubing to start shrinking down on the bundle. Blow on and lightly tap the spots where the tubing is lifting off. This is not necessarily a bad thing, it's just a matter of making it look cosmetically appealing. You can see I have the hot melt adhesive has oozed out fairly well. Got one little spot here that I'd like to see a little more adhesive on. But the truth of the matter is, you have adhesive back over an inch, so whether you actually get 100% bleed out is not as critical as it might appear. In a perfect installation, you would get the bleed out all the way around. You can get the adhesive to flow, and you can get it to move around and help make it look cosmetically more appealing as necessary. Again, this is strictly a cosmetic thing and really isn't necessary. You do want to be careful, depending on what your electrical wire insulation is made out of, that you don't overheat the wiring and damage the wire insulation. But essentially, you have created a solid block of adhesive in the last inch of the tubing. Now, when that cools down, in fact, you can see the adhesive, maybe you can, it's actually up in there even though it hasn't oozed out completely. It has filled that area. Let's see, we can do a little pretty cosmetic work here. Maybe we can make it look even a little better. Again, the cosmetic thing is strictly an experience process and isn't absolutely necessary. And I'm pretty sure you can see that right up in this area here, although there's not a big blob of adhesive out here, the wires are encased, and depending on how much effort you want to put in it, you can still continue to come around and dress the adhesive. It will reflow, and you can manipulate it to some extent to make it look appealing. Now, as in all PRT, the hot melt the overlap adhesive will have pulled back slightly. Once this area is cooled enough so you won't burn yourself, you want to rub your thumb along here, and you can rub off the excess seal overlap adhesive that is a little bit sticky, and it will make your assembly appear cosmetically better, and it will also eliminate a lot of dirt and contaminant buildup by rubbing off the adhesive. And as you can see, it rubs off pretty well. Now, I may have got a little bit of adhesive flow back. This looks like it may be hot melt adhesive. And while I was doing that, it dripped, so we can fix that. And let's heat it back up and let it flow. As I say, you can rework rework's probably the wrong word. You can continue to work the area as necessary to obtain the cosmetic level that you want. It will take a couple 3 minutes for the adhesive to solidify in a mass that large, and I would wait until this hot melt area is very, very close back to room temperature and solid before you attempt to do any rubbing down here. It will be hot, and it will retain its heat longer than PRT normally does because of the adhesive mass, and you don't want to distort the hot adhesive after you've got it where you'd like it to be. The big advantage here is that back here on the cable, this area of the cable is still fairly flexible. If this had been adhesive lined tubing and it was bonded all the way along, once it comes back to room temperature, it's going to be stiff as a board and you won't be able to bend it. So the big advantage to water blocking is that you can control any moisture egress into the further up the cable bundle, but not lose flexibility. Now this feels like it may be cool enough. I can come back and continue to rub that area. And again, this is just making things look nice. Your internal requirements may dictate to what extent you do this, but this can, as I said earlier, this can be achieved with standard heat shrink tubing and zipper tubing Z-block tape. Can also be achieved with zipper tubing's PRT wraparound tubing. And if this had been a solid conductor cable, this would have been considerably simpler because I wouldn't have had to weave in and out. I would just simply wrap a couple lines around the outer jacket, and I have a sample here, in fact, of a cable that, here's a large diameter like a battery cable that had PRT installed as well, and you can see the PRT split line here, and the adhesive oozed out all the way around and water blocked the end of the cable. You can see there's a slight bulge here. The adhesive mass is only at this end. At the opposite end there is no adhesive sticking out. In fact, you can even see the gap that's created with a wraparound adhesive. On the opposite end, this is all filled with adhesive and no moisture can work its way down inside. And that concludes water blocking. I encourage you to look at the documentation on zippertubing.com. It will go into all of this detail, and I think that we have a finished assembly.